Hi and welcome to another episode of NOWDIVE TV. In this episode we'd like to give you some tips and tricks to reach your valves on your twinset. It's a much discussed topic on the internet and it's actually quite simpler than you think, and the solution is somewhere completely different than you might expect. So join me and I'll explain you all the ins and outs on how to reach your valves on your twinsets. Well, here we have the famous twinset. So before we jump in, let's first talk about the configuration of a twinset. Then I'll show you some stretching exercises to make your shoulders and your arms and your back a little bit more flexible. And then we'll get right to the nitty-gritty and see how we can combine the correct setup of you, the correct setup of your tanks, the correct setups of your harness, your position in the water, and we'll get you reaching your valves in no time. So let's start with the configuration of the tanks. In this case it's a steel, two steel tanks, two steel 12-liter tanks with two bands. As you notice, the top band is right there where the shoulder of the valve or of the tank stops, and that's where it should be. Don't get tempted by moving the bands down to get the tanks higher up, because it'll only put you in a worse position to reach your valves. It'll make you top heavy. So leave them up here where they are from the get-go. They're 11-inch apart, so that way they match up with the holes in the backplate. That's an industry standard. The valves obviously need to be well lubricated, and I'll put a link in the description to another video we have on that one. That's in Danish, but you can look at the pretty pictures. We prefer this type of manifold where there's actually a tap going in with two O-rings. I'll put a picture up here somewhere, I think. And as you notice, these two lock nuts, they're not locked. So this manifold, now there's no pressure on this one because it's a brand new set, but when there's pressure on even there, you can move this, and it should be like that, because if you hit this, the chances of this valve breaking are less. And this is actually the only single point failure on a twinset, so that's another topic. But this should be able to move. It's just as airtight, no matter what. So when you got the tank set up correctly, we can look at our wing, our back plate setup. Here we can look at two wings, a single tank wing and a double wing. Let's look at the double wing for now. Don't be tempted to tighten up these chest straps. These chest straps are there mainly basically to have two D-rings to attach to and to carry the set on land. Underwater they don't really serve a purpose apart from having a place for those D-rings, of course. But look at another video we made on how to set up your harness, because there's actually supposed to be a good amount of space in your shoulder area for you to be able to put a fist in between the harness and your chest when you're just wearing a t-shirt, because that way you'll make sure you can easily get in and out of your harness setup. This is all because the stability comes from the waist strap. The waist strap in combination with the crotch strap actually gives the stability on a set. A little bit similar to a backpack when you're hiking. Regarding the crotch strap, just have that snug, especially when you're going to do a lot of scootering. When you're going to use some scooters, you're going to have to be sure that it's nice and snug and it doesn't allow for much movement there. And also when the whole setup is correct and configured correct, there's no need to open up some buckle and move the set up or something like that. You'll need to be able to reach your valves without undoing your equipment. Right, some stretching exercises to get your shoulders a little bit more flexible. A very good exercise to do is first make sure you can reach your elbow like this. Keep your back as straight as possible and just pull with your left hand, in this case your right shoulder, until you can feel and you can just stretch out the side of your body. Point your elbow all the way to the ceiling as far as you can. Look up as far as you can. You can feel it stretching here. Go like this. You count to 10. 1, 2, 10. And you easily let go. Release, give it a shake, and then do the other one. So that's a very good question, a very good exercise. Another one is do the same thing, but across your chest. Now, it's not an exercise to make sure you can reach the furthest back. It's an exercise to stretch this out here. So keep your shoulders as straight as possible, pull it out, and just until there's tension, keep it there for 10 seconds, and slowly release. Then, another exercise. Place your hand, when you're standing like this, at roughly 90 degrees, and then slowly walk back until you can feel again the stretching here underneath your arm, and you can feel a little bit in your chest. There we go. Then another one. Grab your hands behind your back and just push your chest out as far as you can and try to lift your hands up as far as you can. Alright, so now we got the configuration sorted of the tanks and of your harness. We're giving you some stretching exercises, so get on with that, and then we'll get down to it. When people come to me in the shop and say, hey, well, I have trouble reaching my valves, I've tried everything. I've tried moving the set, tightening up, loosening it, moving the back plate up and down and all that sort of stuff. Usually the problem is not in the equipment, as always. When I tell them that you cannot reach your valves, it's probably because you cannot really control your modified frog kick. And then they're like, what? What on earth does that have to do with anything? Well, let me tell you, a lot. Let me just grab Woody over there and I'll show you what I mean. Hi everyone, this is Woody, everyone. This is Woody, a little doll that's used for, I think, drawing lessons or something. We're using it for scuba lessons. And he got injured last week, so excuse this one leg missing. The point is, when your double set, when your twin set is laying on your back here, it's lively. So that means when you reach yourself up, it's going to sag behind, and when you look forward, it's going to fall forward. Just a tiny little bit, but that's enough. Now, also, pay attention to Woody's back. It's arched. See? So from his knees to his hips, it's a parallel line to the bottom, or surface. And then his back is arched, his chest is forward, and he's looking up and his hands are in front. Now, if you're diving in with a twin set, you're very likely to be diving in a dry suit as well. So there'll be air in your dry suit underneath your shoulders and underneath your feet here. And this is a good thing because that'll actually carry you around. There's other videos on our channel regarding dry suit exercises and trim tips and all that sort of stuff. But this is the way we want to be in the prone position. Now, this is what I mean. You need to be able to be proficient with a modified frog kick in able to keep this position when you start shifting weight and air, when you start moving your arms and hands, right? We keep these hands roughly out in front for balance purposes. So when we start reaching back, we're going to move stuff. We're going to move the air around our shoulders here. So when the air moves in our suit, it's going to have a negative effect, or an influence at least, in our trim. So when we remove a little bit of air in the front and it moves back, we're going to get top heavy. So if you have a good control over your modified frog kick, that means you can use a modified frog kick to push water upwards. Ergo, pushing your torso downwards. So you can counteract that top heavy feeling with a small fin kick called a modified frog kick, where you're just basically kicking with your ankle the water up towards the surface, and that keeping the lower half of your body down. So that's step one. Make sure you'll be able to stay in trim while reaching backwards. So first exercise, stay in the water, get a fixed position, get a buddy, put up a line, to the front of the anchor line, somewhere where you don't float forwards, and just all you need to do is put your hand on your head. So you're laying in the water like this, like Woody, all you need to do is go from this position, just put your hand on your head and stay there. Then when you got that, do the other hand, your head. Then when you got that, just see if you can just reach as far back as you can. Just don't worry about reaching the valves. It's all about the reaction of your body when you're moving your limbs underwater. So stay in the same position, focus on the same position, just move your hand as far back as you can. Don't worry about reaching the valves, don't reach for them, just stick your hand as far back as you can. And stay in the same position, because the positioning is the most important thing. Why do we do these valve exercises? Is to be able to react when something goes wrong behind our backs. Now, if you react behind your back, and because of that reaction, you lose completely track of your team, your situational awareness goes down the drain, then what's the point, right? So, practice that first. Make sure you can stay in trim when your hands are moving all over the place. When we want to reach our valves, we have to think of the valves that are attached to the tanks as something different than our bodies. What do we do when we want to scratch our back? If I want to reach something that's on my back, I scratch forward and I scratch on my back, right? I'll just pull my shoulders up, because that way I can get further down my back. And that's because it's me. Tanks on your back are not you. I mean, when you practice a lot, they'll become an extension of you, but they'll never you. So we have to think in a little bit different way. We don't need to reach by scrunching forward, because actually what we're doing is we're moving the tanks further back. So that's tip number 2. Let's look at the tanks as something different from our bodies. And I'll show you with a rod, a pin or something, if I can find something. Give me a second. Here we go. Now I'm not trying to imitate Conan the Barbarian. I just want to get something to illustrate a straight line that's attached to my back, but it's not part of my back. So look at this straight line. That's in the position where a double set would be, right? So if I want to reach the tanks, but I think my logistics of reaching something on my back that's attached to my back with me underwater, I'll make this motion. I'll crouch down and try to reach back. But look at my hand. If I stay in here, this is really the furthest I can get. I cannot reach no matter what I do. I have to stay like Woody, stay with your chest up, looking up, and now all of a sudden it's right here. I don't even have to reach all the way back. I can just touch it, because I need to arch my back and chest forward. Now, super important, stay in trim. Because if you let your knees drop and you come out of trim, your set will become heavy and it'll fall down. It'll again hang on the shoulder straps, and we don't need that. When we're in the water in trim position, those shoulder straps are actually loose. They're not completely cinched down. So look like this, look up and reach the valves. Sorry. Where were we? Alright, so stay like Woody, stay in trim. Use your feet with a modified frog kick to stay in trim and manipulate that air bubble. Think about the tanks as something different than your body, so actually keep that prone position, keep your arch back and reach back. And now we have to know a little bit about the anatomy of our shoulder. Our shoulder is better capable to move backwards if we keep our elbow pointing forwards. So if I make this motion with my elbow forwards, I can reach further back. If I, as I see a lot of people do, trying to reach like this, you're locking your shoulder up here. So don't move like this, but keep your elbow in front and you can reach much further back. So to recap, get your setup correct. Don't be too tight on your harness. When you get in the water, make sure everything is in place. And when you reach back towards your valves, make sure you think of the tanks as something different than your body. So they're behind you. Stretch out, stay in trim. Keep your elbow pointing forward. It'll help you with your shoulder. And now for a last little tip of the day. we get dressed up, we're running around in our undergarments, and when it's like here in Denmark, it's quite cold here in the winter time, so there's a lot of undergarments and it fills up underneath, right? So what happens is when you're rocking around in your undergarment and your dry suit, the undergarment is going to slowly sag a little bit down. Now, then what happens, you walk into the water, right? And your suit goes to you. So it has actually sucked everything down and now completely squeezed it into your body. So when you're underwater, the first thing you feel is that your undersuit is actually hindering you. It's being held in place because the suit, even though you pushed a little bit of air in it, it's still squeezed a little bit. So what you want to do, especially well, when wearing thick underwear, is get underwater, get in trim. You can feel the suit is squeezed. Stretch out your arm as far as it'll go. You can actually feel the undersuit and then add a little bit of air. Because as soon as you put the air in the suit, it's going to make a little movement in the suit that allows you to just stretch a little bit out. Do that for both arms and you'll be much more, you have much more flexibility underwater. At the same time, your set will come from hanging on your shoulders and you can move it a little bit so it's laying on your back and then you're good to go. So if you have any comments or questions, leave a comment down below. Send us an email with your questions if you want. If you have any other tips about how you manage to reach your valves, don't be shy to share it underneath as well. And if you haven't already, give a thumbs up to this video or subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content in both Danish and English. Have a nice day out there and keep stretching. You can also obviously talk to us about side mount and be rid with that valve. Mumbo jumbo.